So, well, maybe it's been more than a few weeks ago, but recently, Don had mentioned that his teacher, Philip Moffat, who's a Dharma teacher at Spirit Rock, talked about the renunciation of three experiences for us that we often pursue as humans. And I want to address them this morning, and thanks to Don for bringing them to my attention. I don't know if my take on them will be different than Philip's, but Don can let me know if it goes too far afield. But the three things that Don shared with us are judging, comparing, and fixing, and that we want to consider perhaps renouncing each of those. And you will recall that renunciation is a central theme in Buddhist practice, not necessarily meaning we become ascetics and wear robes and wander around, looking for enlightenment, but that we think about it in terms of letting go of attachments, and letting go of desires that tether us to suffering and delusion. So we want to think about renunciation in that context. And while the renunciation of material possessions and external cravings is commonly how we understand this, there exists a more subtle and equally, I think, transformative form of renunciation that I want to talk about this morning. And that's the relinquishment of mental habits that perpetuate discontent, perpetuate disharmony, and cause us suffering. And among these are the tendencies that Don shared with us to judge, to compare, and to fix things, which stand out as profound obstacles to inner peace and spiritual awakening. And we'll get into those in some detail. And to renounce these habits doesn't mean that we abandon discernment, we abandon individuality or effort. And it's more talking about them as a shift from ego-driven reactions to a place of greater equanimity and greater compassionate awareness. And I will address each of the three separately. So I want to explore the nature of these three habits, the impact they can have on our lives, and the wisdom of letting them go. So let's start with judging. Judging in this context does not refer to wise discernment or ethical evaluation. I don't mean that kind of judging where we're discerning wisely or making ethical considerations. What I'm talking about here is the ego-driven tendency to label others, to label ourselves, and to label the world or see the world in rigid terms of good and bad, right or wrong. We talked about last week opinions as a form of suffering. Judging can be a critical part of opinions, rigidly held opinions. And this form of judgment often, for many of us, arises from a place of insecurity or a need to affirm our own sense of superiority over others or affirm our own moral standard, all of which are ego-driven qualities. When we judge others, we create separation from them. It becomes me versus you, us versus them. It reinforces this illusion of duality, and it fuels negative emotions like anger, pride, disdain, and so forth. Similarly, when we judge ourselves harshly, we perpetuate cycles of guilt, cycles of shame, cycles of self-loathing, all of which are contrary to our path, because our Buddhist path teaches us to adopt compassionate and non-judgmental awareness toward all beings, including ourselves. Non-judgmental awareness toward all beings. The Buddha emphasized that each of us acts based on our unique conditioning and level of understanding and experiences in the world. And recognizing this profound truth lets us soften our judgments, view others with empathy rather than condemnation or superiority. And importantly, with ourselves, the practice encourages us to witness our thoughts and actions without attaching labels, without attaching criticism, without bringing the second arrow in of loading things up with all kinds of judging statements and comments. Now, again, renouncing judgment the way I'm talking about this morning does not mean abandoning discernment. It does not mean abandoning our moral and ethical guidelines. It means letting go of the ego's need to divide the world into rigid categories. And when we do this, We cultivate a spaciousness of mind, which allows love and wisdom and understanding to arise. So that's judgment in terms of trying to renounce that habit of mind that always has us judging and the suffering that results from it. Next up in that list of three is comparing. And this is a close cousin to judging. Comparing is just a deeply ingrained habit. It may even be hardwired, which we could speculate about, a deeply ingrained habit of the human mind. And this comes from the ego's needs to measure ourselves against others to affirm our worth. Oh, I'm richer than you, I'm poorer than you, I'm taller than you, I'm skinnier than you, on and on and on. We compare our looks, we compare our achievements, we compare our possessions, and we even compare our spiritual progress. And we fall into feelings of envy, of pride, of inadequacy, this whole realm of sources of suffering. And at its core, comparing stems from misunderstanding the interconnectedness of all things. Because in the pursuit of comparison, we forget that each sentient being is a unique expression of the universe shaped by countless causes and conditions that we may not even know or understand. You know, the Buddha so brilliantly reminded us that comparison is a form of delusion. It reinforces this false sense of this separate, solidified self. When we compare, we're caught in the trap of suffering, this cycle of craving and aversion, always seeking to be better or fearing that we are less. Renouncing comparisons involves recognizing the futility of this mental habit and turning inward to appreciate our own path as it unfolds. And then when we do this, we come to understand that life's not a competition. It's not, a pecking order that we always have to worry about. It's a shared journey toward awakening. And this is a kind of radical thought in our culture where everything is based upon achievement. Everything is based upon comparing. And, as I said, we may be hardwired by evolution to compare, but we're not necessarily prisoners of it. Because by letting go, or at least reducing the extent that we compare, we free ourselves from the suffering that it always brings. If we feel better than someone, then we fear losing that status. If we feel less than someone, we feel inadequate and suffer from that. But when we open our hearts to genuine joy for the successes and well-being of ourselves and others, we create connection. We reduce separation. And as Teddy Roosevelt, I love this quote, you've heard me say it before, comparison is the thief of joy. It just takes it away because we're so busy trying to figure out where we are in whatever pecking order we're thinking about. So that's the habit of mind we call comparing. And then finally we have fixing, the third of the ones that Don reminded us of. And this habit of fixing arises from the belief that we must control and perfect everything around us to achieve happiness or peace. We have to fix everything. And this includes the compulsion often manifest in most of us to fix other people. And it also to solve every problem. And certainly to fix ourselves according to some idealized image or some perfectionistic standard. And yes, there's merit to alleviate suffering and improve our circumstances. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about trying to do better and live better. I'm talking about this fixation on fixing, which leads to frustration, which leads to burnout. When we struggle against the reality of impermanence and the uncontrollable nature of reality, when we try to fix the unfixable. In Buddhist practice, the wisdom of letting go teaches us that not everything needs to be nor can be fixed. Many, if not most situations, relationships, or aspects of ourselves simply need to be accepted, underline accepted, as they are. This desire to fix things stems from attachment, attachment to the idea of how we think things should be in some idealized form. So embracing this habit involves embracing the present renouncing this habit. Renouncing this habit involves embracing the present moment with radical acceptance and trust in the unfolding of life as it unfolds. Now, this doesn't mean passivity, it doesn't mean indifference. It means that we recognize that true transformation arises not from some forceful intervention to fix things, but from mindful presence and compassionate action, which helps us accept things as they are, not as we wish them to be. When we let go of the need to fix everything, we create space for natural harmony and growth to emerge. Now, I don't want to leave the impression that renouncing judging, renouncing comparison, renouncing fixing are easy tasks. These habits are deeply ingrained in the human psyche, and we often feel them to be necessary for navigating life's challenges. But the good news is that the Buddhist teachings offer us a way to transcend these patterns by cultivating mindfulness, by cultivating compassion, by cultivating wisdom. Because through meditation and self-inquiry, self-awareness, we begin to observe these tendencies as they arise. Remember, self-awareness and observing ourselves is critical, because if we don't see this stuff arise, we can't do anything about it. But when we begin to see these tendencies arise in a dysfunctional way, we can gently release them and come back to the present moment. When we let go of judging, we find freedom in accepting ourselves and others as they are. When we let go of comparing, we discover the joy of being fully present in our own journey. And when we let go of fixing, we experience the peace of surrendering to the flow of life as it is. Now, again, by renouncing these habits, these mental habits, we're not giving up on the world. We're not giving up on ourselves, but we're stepping into a deeper relationship with reality. A relationship that is grounded in equanimity and compassion. So in the end, this practice of renunciation is not about deprivation or indifference. It's about liberation. It's about freedom. In the act of unburdening ourselves from these mental chains that keep us from realizing our true nature and the true nature of the world in which we live. As we release the habits of judging, comparing, and fixing, we open the door to greater reality, to greater clarity, to harmony, to freedom, and a life rooted in the wisdom of the Dharma. So that's some thoughts on renunciation. Thanks to Don bringing that to our attention. Oops, where did we go here?